November 18, 2017. My name is Kuldip Randhawa. I live in Surrey, BC, British Columbia, a province of Canada, a nation that's considered at the forefront of human rights. As you may know, I have done a number of videos on YouTube concerning various frauds that I have personally experienced within the court system, and also cultural exploitation, which is the primary reason why this is occurring, is the focus of this video. One must realize that the videos are not of good quality because of the circumstances that I'm going through. The experiences that took place on June 8th, 2017 before Judge Murray, and despite having written numerous emails to the registry, I feel that I'm not getting the same response, and despite making numerous complaints, I felt that the best way to deal with this is to expose the problem entirely. One has to understand that there's a reason why this is all occurring in my life in British Columbia. I did not come to Canada on the basis of exposing this problem. I came because of its advertisement at a world level as being a nation that is at the forefront of human rights. I came to start a new life. And what I've realized is that there are serious problems in this nation. And perhaps all of these problems are related to what is happening to the Sikhs in general throughout the world. So what is cultural exploitation? Is one main topic here, and also exploring the reasons why it may be happening. As a professional engineer, having satisfied all of the conditions of APEC BC, the engineering association that has involved itself in considerable fraud, I actually was involved in a number of community projects. A number of projects in which I designed gurdwaras. A gurdwara is actually what most people will know as a Sikh temple. And I will discuss a little bit more about this as I go on. But in designing the gurdwaras, in which the design of the actual building was five-sided, in which it was going to be a primary function that each wall of the Darbar Sahib, which is part of the Gurdwara, which is the sitting hall upstairs normally, is linked to the Akal Tahkt and the other Takhts of the Sikh faith. The concept behind the design of this Gurdwara, in which I am not an architect, but I did actually involve other architects into a number of Gurdwaras in Oliver, Kamloops, Prince Rupert, and also in Surrey. Unfortunately, the design of the Gurdwara in Prince Rupert did not go ahead as I had planned. But the concept was to ensure that the people will be united with the Sikhs and the Sikh faith and its culture and the religion. And that was the primary focus. And so I made some speeches when we had opening ceremonies. So was this the reason why I am being somehow tagged? Because the progress of this nation is somehow being monitored and you don't want us to be somehow united? Was that one possible reason? Is another reason that perhaps this fraud by APEC BC, in which I was actually set up to blame a person from the ethnic community, because they know that our people in British Columbia are somewhat controlled and they're not going to stand by me, and so therefore let's target this person from the Sikh faith. Is that another reason for this? Or was it because of my association with a certain person who was involved in one of the Sikh projects in Kamloops that was perhaps under investigation. Is that another reason? And so all the people that knew this person are somehow tagged and being investigated. What is the reason for all of these activities happening to me, as I have now disclosed to the world in various videos concerning the APEC fraud, concerning the CRA fraud and the Oliver lots, and concerning the fingerprinting issue, concerning the PR card issue in which my nationality has been changed to Indian when I'm actually a British citizen, and then the gateway fraud, a high-rise site in which a former brother was involved with me on the project. So the attacks are now coming through family members or partners. And I belong to a community that's not going to speak out. So, you know what, let's just target Mr. Randhawa here. So perhaps, as the expression goes, let's kill two birds with one stone. So perhaps there's a double reason. Perhaps you wanted to hold accountable so that the progress of the religion is not being made, because this person is now going out making speeches in Gurdwaras, and at the same time we need someone to pass the blame on, and so you put me on some kind of a short list, and maybe there's other people on that short list that perhaps there are other people in this nation of the same faith that have gone through similar experiences, that don't realize what is truly happening until perhaps they see the videos that I've made. And so those individuals need to come forward. So whatever the reasons are, they need to be investigated. This is not some isolated event. And so what is cultural exploitation? Just so that we have a reasonable appreciation of what it is. And to do that, I would have to go into history and talk about a certain person, a general of the British Army, who actually went and opened fire at the protest that was taking place on Baisakhi Day, where the intent was to kill and physically murder close to 2,000 individuals. And based on the reports, some reports are stating that 500 people were killed, and some are stating there are 1,200 killed. And there's other reports that 1,800 people were wounded, and these included women and children as well. And this protest, which was no different to a person that may stand on a platform, just like one does Hyde Park Corner, where we have Speaker's Corner, where everybody can go and speak their mind and not be held accountable, within reason, of course. And so this was a peaceful protest, and so many people were killed. And quite a few people know this, because it's been the subject of my book as well, Absolute Privilege to Deprive, by Author House. And it's been the subject of some movies. The movie made by Sir Richard Attenborough, where there's a 10-minute clip showing how these Sikhs were killed. And then it resulted in a major protest throughout the world, and it was considered that this event was the beginning of the end of the British Raj in India. And so there was condemnation throughout the world, including Sir Winston Churchill, who clearly wanted General Dyer to be disciplined and equivalent to being court-martialed, whilst there were other people raising a fund for him because they considered he had done a wonderful job. And so one can expect that when one is in war, there are people who are going to be somewhat of a different thought, different thinking, just simply can't get through to them. And they can do so much damage and they don't care because they're essentially racists. They believe that their religion is far superior than others. But what I'm about to tell you now is sort of to close on this issue and really have a good appreciation of what cultural exploitation is. In the Golden Temple at that time, because of influence, General Dyer was actually bestowed a saffron cloth. And actually it was been reported in some newspapers that at that time a turban and a sword was given, but the truth of the matter is, I think that may be somewhat misreported. The custom here, even today, is when someone does a good deed, some good act, and some community service which is recognized, the Sikh faith and the people in the Gurdwaras would bestow a saffron cloth, which is an orange cloth that's put around the neck. That is one of the highest honor that one can get. And so the people, the Sikhs who had turbans and beards, who were in charge of the Golden Temple under the influence, bestowed this gift to General Dyer. A saffron cloth was put around his neck to essentially say, well done. You've done a wonderful job of killing, attacking, murdering up to 2,000 Sikhs. This was done by people within the Golden Temple itself. That is the nature of what cultural exploitation is. When the will of a people is destroyed, when the soul of that religion is destroyed to such a level that the people of that faith do not speak out. And then soon after that, there was a new Sikh committee established, the Shiromani Sikh Committee, and then there was a major change taking place in the politics of Punjab at that time. And for General Dyer, he was retired and he started lecturing people, and people all over the world had given him a title, and that title was essentially the butcher of Amritsar, so that people could actually make him feel like he was a horrid person. But to him, he went around with speeches. To him, that title was actually an honor, like he felt so proud of himself. To such an extent that when a book was written about him, in which his wife or widow at that time actually named that book The Butcher of Amritsar, as it was such a great honor. And there were people who were raising funds for him, around about £21,000 that time, which in today's times is probably equivalent to more than £1 million. And he felt proud of himself. That is what the nature of some people are. But that is in history. One hopes that change will take place, and the apology offered by Her Majesty the Queen and also by the Prime Minister David Cameron soon after that was a step in the right direction. And I have appreciated that, even though the apology came late. But the apology was made. So one thinks that change has occurred. But it clearly has not, based upon my experiences over here. And so you have numerous situations like this where people are being investigated. And because they don't seem to have a turban and a beard, they tend to be ignored. by some of the Sikh leaders here in Surrey, BC. And to assess that if this is a problem in Surrey or maybe it's throughout BC, I actually travelled all over BC, all the way up to Prince Rupert. Stayed with a friend who was very close to me. The conditions upon which I stayed were not quite ideal because the circumstances of people sometimes are not quite what one expected, but he welcomed me there and I stayed, and I actually returned visiting almost every Sikh Gurdwara on the way back to Surrey. Just to see if the problem is just in Surrey, where people are not coming forward from the Sikh Gurdwaras. And I found that some of the Gurdwaras up north are actually financially burdened. They do not have sufficient funds to somehow meet normal because the population over there is less, and so the expenses of the Gurdwaras are difficult to take care of some of the expenses. And so are some of the Gurdwaras in Surrey addressing that issue. Because one Gurdwara has more income coming in, is our Gurdwaras just about income? We don't care about what happens up north. But quite a number of people did come forward to a certain level, but not one what I expected of this faith. And their message was, why don't you go back to Surrey, where there are 10, 15 Gurdwaras that are making sufficient income because there's enough population out there. And then soon after that, me and my friend, Avanko Kravilowski, who was also attacked within the court system when he wanted a interpreter. And then soon after that I came across another person because I had decided that something had to be done here. I wanted to really research this problem sufficiently. I came across another fellow from the same community, Mr. Satinder Dhillon, a person who had actually exposed a fraud that was taking place by KPMG, which involved the government. And so they arrested him at his premises. Rather than the RCMP investigating the fraud, they were actually arrested this individual. And there are other people. Take Mr. Dr. Hakan Buller, for example. Took him 10 years to fight the Veterans Association. And all of these people are fighting by themselves most of the time. And some of their position is better because it's just one thing, just one action is being dealt with. And sometimes it's difficult for the community to relate what the problem is because they think it's just an isolated incident. And so they focus everything on there. But in my case, the APEG fraud is what started it all. And then from there, it went on to other businesses which I controlled. And when I've tried in numerous occasions, I went before Justice Verhoeven and raised this as part of a petition to the court. And that justice clearly understood what I was saying to him. And he did nothing. He declared me as vexatious, when clearly I am not. And so most of these frauds are covered in the other video, so I do not want to dwell too much on this. But my appeal here really is to the Akal Tahkt. The fact of the matter is, I'm not being treated equally by Canadians, and something has to be done here. This cultural exploitation, I think, is quite vile, and it's still based on old school thought of when a nation was being taken over by the British when they were expanding their empire, where the community had to be controlled, and those who spoke out were assassinated or killed. So some progress has really been made here, because in the modern day, one cannot go that far, because Canada is at the forefront of human rights. That's what people are always told. But we have the CRA fraud, for example, where even the Queen is unaware of what's truly happening because taxes have to be collected in her name. I doubt very much that she's fully aware of what is happening here. So the public is also being deceived in the same way. And so the last video that I came up with was the immediate justice reform, which covers considerable number of points on how some of the problems can be solved. But the problem of the Sikh leaders actually refusing assistance to me is the focus of this video. Why is it that the Sikh politicians have ignored me? A number of Sikh politicians in Surrey that I've approached have refused to even provide a single letter. Some of these individuals are engineers and politicians, so they clearly understand what's happening here. And I don't want to say that I'm picking on the Sikh politicians alone. Other politicians have also ignored me, but I'm holding the Sikh politicians to a higher standard. Because as Sikhs, you know what problems Sikhism has, what we have gone through. I'm quite certain you're aware of the cultural exploitation, and it may be that the Akal Tahkt is not fully aware of the situation of what's taking place here, based upon the reports that have been sent out by some of the Sikhs here, because they are actually not acting as Sikhs. The impact of the cultural exploitation is this, that over centuries, in fact there's going to be another book written by me called The Sikh Ship. It's actually been written already, in the process of being published. But this book focuses on really what's happening here. When you have a religion that has been culturally exploited in excess of 2 centuries, the sad reality is that we are not following Sikhism as we should, nor do we understand its culture. So there's no debate taking place. The problem is not being exposed, and when it is being exposed, the matters go out of hand because the Sikh people at present, I believe, are not fully ready to understand what's truly happening here. Now I understand that the Akal Tahkt has the responsibility to look after the Sikhs throughout the world. And as a Sikh who is clean-shaven, I am proud of Sikhism, and I'm appealing to you. I think you are wise individuals. I know there's a lot of difficulties that I have, and I am willing to accept that there's a lot of difficulties that you have in India as well. And so the problem may be a little bit difficult to address. But it has to be addressed. And what happened last time, I think, when the Hukamnama was issued about the table and chairs issues, this is when I actually went and started to design a number of gurdwaras. And I did not isolate the clean-shaven folks, or the modern Sikhs, as they want to say. When they wanted to design gurdwaras, I also offered it to them as well, with the condition that I would be sitting on the floor, because that's what my views are, but I'm not going to be turning away you guys simply because we simply can't come to terms, because we are still of the same faith. And the primary reason, I believe, of why this problem went out of control, it was really, to be honest, even though some people may not want to accept it, was one of a comfort level. Because we've become accustomed to sitting on chairs. We can pay money to some clubs and do yoga. We will pay money and do all that yoga exercises and sit on the floor, but I guess we have difficulty coming into the Sikh gurdwaras and sitting on the floors. So that's fine. We have different opinions. But this problem of cultural exploitation, where fraud is taking place and our Sikh leaders are not speaking out, has to be addressed. Where I feel that because I don't have a turban, I feel I'm being discriminated against Sikhs here. And so, let's imagine that as a person, I'm appealing to the Akal Tahkt to issue another hukumnama. And I know you're wise people, and I'm sure this time around I'm going to simply say that perhaps one should consider the comfort level of Sikhs here. Even though we are supposed to be going through all sorts of hardships, and we have done so in history, I think we need to understand that this is actually causing a lot of problem for some Sikhs who have really moved away from Sikhism so far that they don't even know how far they've gone. And so this hukamnama, as a suggestion from me, is like this. Let's consider what some Sikhs have told me in the Gurdwaras. I have been told that the Nishan Sahib, which is a Sikh flag outside the Gurdwara, is raised high up. It's raised high up because we are told that if anybody needs help, that they can come to the Gurdwara. And that's what the meaning of the Nishan Sahib is. But how is it that we have gone so far that a nation of people, a religion that fought for other countries, other religions, other faiths, are now not in a position to fight for our own people? We can't even look after ourselves. How can we look after and defend the rights of others? This is a serious problem because it undermines the entire ability of who Sikhs are, and it actually discredits Sikhism throughout the world. And so when we lower this Nishan Sahib, I'm suggesting we lower it for a period of time. Let's say 1 day, 2 days, or 5 days. The Hukamnama can decide, the Jathethars and the Akal Tahkt can decide after considerable debate. And this is, like I said, just a suggestion. And then after 5 days, the Nishan Sahib is washed, and then new cloth is put around it, and then raised again. But during this period of time, and I'm not talking about lowering the Nishan Sahib at Baisakhi time, I'm saying let's have a different event and issue a hukamnama which is throughout the world, to every city, to every nation. So during these 5 days when the hukamnama is issued and the Nishan Sahib is lowered, that there is an opportunity for all Sikhs and non-Sikhs to come forward and discuss their problems and how they would like to address some of the concerns so that we can live and coexist. Because we are living in a foreign country as an ethnic community, and we do not have our own organizations, we don't have our own police force, we don't have the same facilities and rights as other people have here. So we have to fight for those. But if our own Sikhs cannot assist us, then who can? So all of these issues can now be debated during this 5-day period. And so let's take one example. Let's take the example of why Sikh politicians are not coming forward to assist me. What is the reason that you are refusing to assist me? Did you not understand my problems? Is that something like an internal racism that's taking place here within the community because of cultural exploitation? Did you not understand my message, my letters, emails, pictures, that this water tank which failed or allegedly failed had no water pipe, so therefore it's not a water tank? And the Sikh leaders who are always advertising to all of the congregation of what Sikhs have done in history, of what challenges they have undertook, how they were tortured and how despite that torture they did not lose their faith. And then these Sikh priests or the committees, do they then have a right to say no to me? because really they should practice what they preach. Were they afraid? Did they not understand? For example, when I went to the Scott Road Gurdwara, and I talked to the community there, and I clearly explained the APEC matter. And rather than solve the problem for me, or do a letter of support, or told me to go and seek, approach another politician and give them a letter to have this investigation done, they actually sort of become angry with me. Did he not understand? So am I being singled out because I don't have a turban and a beard? Is this what's happening here? Because it seems to me that the Sikh Ardas, which is the prayers, clearly recognize this. They recognize the fact that simply having a turban and a beard is not the entire essence of the religion or the prayers. If you have a Sikh who's doing fraud, does that make the person a Sikh? Does that not affect the image of the Sikhs? If you're so focused about the Sikh image, is that going to be preserved? Look at the Ardas. We are supposed to be humble people and great thinkers. And to just prove this point, in our Ardas we say, Manima Matuchi, which basically means one must be humble, one must be a great thinker. One must be truthful. One must remember God. One must help others. We must have the ability to be great thinkers. We must be humble and have the knowledge and the ability to understand where we can be corrected. If you look at the Ardas, it's all in there, which is stated by millions of Sikhs throughout the world. But yet you want to focus everything on one thing here. Now I understand that Mumbai became Bombay because the British could not say the name properly. And now India has changed that name back to Mumbai. And I know the Golden Temple is called Harmandir Sahib. And so the British couldn't say that. So they took the last word, which was Mandir, which meant Hindu. In Hinduism it means temple. And they saw the gold on the Gurdwara. And so they called it the Golden Temple. So there is a reason why it's called Golden Temple, and I can understand it. But it was given by the British. And so I guess it's when people have difficulty saying our name correctly, are we supposed to then change it? And so why are we calling Gurdwaras in Surrey as temples? And some of them actually called temples because that is associated with Hinduism or Buddhism. In Hinduism you have temples. In Buddhism you have temples. In Islam you have mosques. In Christianity you have churches. In Sikhism we have Gurdwaras. Can we not make a shift and discuss this and try and make a shift towards what it should be? Because it's difficult to say, for us that this is, we have to call it a Sikh temple because everyone's calling it that. Why is it that some of our women, when they're advertising for matrimony, they're openly going out and saying they don't want to get married to a Gursikh, or they want to get married to a clean-shaven person? Why can we not simply say, I want to get married to a Sikh? And then you can discuss on the phone, and then you can meet each other. Perhaps the person is nice despite having a turban. Perhaps the person is nice despite being clean-shaven. Surely the person that you're going to marry is important. Whether it's a male or a female, the same applies. One has to understand that when you are advertising to be religiously correct, it is appropriate to say you want to get married to a Sikh person. Let's not distinguish between clean-shaven and Gursikh. Look at the Ardas. There's a lot of things that we are supposed to be looking at in a person, not just the fact that a person has a turban. And so these are just some of the problems that we can resolve. That we are being divided by ourselves because we are being exploited and have been for a period of time, and we need to resolve this issue sooner than later. What is it that we lack? Do we not have politicians? Do we not have lawyers? Take another organization which I respected immensely, the World Sikh Organization. I respected that organization not only because they were doing a good job initially, but my uncle, who I respect immensely, was a president of this organization. I have approached them many times. Why is it that you refuse me a 10-minute speech? Why is it that you refuse me a simple letter? What was the reasons? Were you so concerned about the Canadian government making some statement for Sikhism that you would set aside a Sikh who is in trouble and needed your assistance? Or were you promoting someone within the organization because some of the people have now moved away? When a person is attacked because he's got a turban, it hurts me because the Sikh image has to be preserved. Our gurus have actually fought so much for that image. But let us not forget one thing. Other than the fact that we have our Ardas, which recognizes a number of things that we are supposed to consider, our 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, is the one that came up with the identity for the Sikhs. Because we were going through troubled times at that time, and we had to raise the sword to defend it. And yes, we are militant. Because of that, we are existing today. But yet, some people within the Sikh faith, they're saying, oh, we shouldn't be so militant. And I agree with that. We don't have to be militant because we're not going to be going out beating people up, bullying them, because the sword is part of our religion. That sword is equivalent to the sword carried by goddess Themis, goddess of justice, is there to provide justice to people. So we can then go in the world as peacemakers, perhaps. We can go out in the world and do the same function that the United Nations have now done, or are doing, or not doing. So, if the cultural exploitation did not exist, perhaps we would be doing all of these things. And this is why you have to read the Sikh book, which is now being written by me in English for a reason. It's called The Sikh Ship. It talks about why we are going in the wrong direction, and why it seems that the Sikh faith has turned against other Sikhs because of our lack of understanding, because we are not thinking as great thinkers as we are required to be, because we're not humble as we are required to be. And I do not want to be discriminated against by other Sikhs who have turbans, because that's what I'm feeling at the moment. We have to remember one thing, that our 10th Guru gave us the identity. The 9 Gurus before that spoke about Sikhism. It's true there was a tradition of wearing turbans because of India is a nation where many turbans are worn because of the hot weather. I understand that. But the 9 Gurus before the 10th Guru were not so much focused on the identity. They did not say, you have to wear a turban and then we'll consider you as a Sikh. The Sikh identity was given much like a policeman has a uniform. And so I've said enough. All I can say now is this, that when certain people within the culture are exploited to such a level, and they know that they are doing wrong, our faith requires you to do the right thing. And when certain people have become so egoistic, then I think some of the relatives within the family have to come forward and assist and make them realize. Perhaps someone can go and talk to my brother Majid and explain to him. If he still doesn't understand what I've said to him in this video, perhaps someone in England can go and talk to him and say that what you're doing is totally wrong here, based upon the reasons of judgment in the gateway proceedings. You can take steps to release my money without an application, because Judge Murray stated that to me, that she was going to be releasing my funds. You simply have to read and talk to your lawyers, or your so-called lawyers, who are perhaps still deceiving you, or perhaps you want to be deceived. But stop deceiving the relatives who are respecting you, and they do not deserve this. You can't get away with this if you don't settle with me, which I'm prepared to do. And do not consider this as a sign of weakness. It is required, because the alternative is there may be a claim in excess of $10 million against you. I have no idea what my losses are up until now in BC on the other matters. A forensic accountant will be dealing with that. The assault that took place in the court will be a separate matter. We do not want to fight, do not want to cause problems. Sikhs are not those people. But do not play with our culture. Do not consider for 1 second that the Sikh faith will not speak out. We are very capable, we are humble people, and I know we are being exploited, and because of that you're taking certain advantages. But look at who you are as people. Everyone can consider a saying in Sikhism, and that is this: before becoming a Sikh, or a Christian, or a Hindu, or a Muslim, one must first learn to be a human being. That is the essence of every religion. When you're going to play with our honor and our culture, we have not even done anything to you to deserve this. It's time we put away the old models that once existed, in which now Her Majesty the Queen is also being implicated in wrongs that are being done by Christians in the courthouses. Quite a few Christians do exist in the courthouses. Do you not have faith? Are there some Hindus out there who can help us, because we've always helped you guys? We have one world. We need to come together so we can live in peace and harmony. Let us remember the First Nations. You want to see what suffering is? Talk to those individuals, and they will tell you what suffering is. So, I can go on forever, but I'm appealing especially to the Akal Tahkt. Something needs to be done here. And so, you can contact me by email, kuldiprandhawa5@gmail.com. That's KULDIPRANDHAWA5@gmail.com. God bless.